So before I bring in Alexander Slater, once again, I want to bring in General Shukla on the aspect of border talks. While there is a mechanism that is being talked about between Wang, who's a member of the Politburo, who's the foreign minister, special representative on boundary talks, and Ajit Doval, India's national security advisor, if there's reference to their meeting in Delhi and talking of a mechanism of confidence building measures and some talk of demarcation, do you see that as forward movement, or do you see that just as more words? Because we've had disengagement, we haven't had de-escalation. I don't even know if we'll ever have de-induction with both sides well entrenched all along the LAC. But your appreciation, sir.
So before I come to the China piece, Gaurav, I wanted to make just one comment on the Indo-US relationship. Even if this were just the tantrums of a maverick president, I would be okay with it. But there is greater layering. Last year, I heard Steve Bannon, who's at the heart of the MAGA advocacy, say that, this H-1B is a lie. It has been perpetuated on the Americans by American companies. The Indians are not talented. And lo and behold, now you have Harvard Lutnick saying the same thing about revisiting H-1B. So it's not going to end with oil tariffs. It's going to go to people-to-people contacts, H-1B, and so on. So therefore, my optimism on reviving the Indo-US relationship is rather low. See, insofar as China is concerned, we must realize now we are a big power. Multipolarity in Asia will not be given to us on a platter. We'll have to contest it. We'll have to seek it, get it. And therefore now, along the LAC, what happened in Galwan was when we had not balanced to the north, we were balanced to the west. Now that we have balanced to the north, the government should tell the Chief of Defense Staff that, listen, you have balanced adequately to the north, take these technologies and please assure us that deterrence will not fail. Because the larger Indo-Chinese relationship is simply too valuable for it to, ride on failures or on the LAC. They just have to end. And in that sense, it can be done if such a political diktat is given to the armed forces. And I'm not saying that the Chinese are, absolutely innocent. They must be trusted only after verification. And the 3Ds that you mentioned, they are all very good. But they all rest on the fourth larger D, which is deterrence. I mean, militaries respond to deterrence. Disengagement, so on and so forth, are diplomatic matters. And the last point that I wish to make is that in the larger sense, of course, we have weaknesses. Unless we reverse these manufacturing dependencies, diversify trade, create some choke points. The Chinese have rare earths to handle with American misbehavior. What do you have? Mere pleadings don't do. So in the larger sense, we have to build these strategic choke points, deterrence, and we should never feel guilty because we were embracing America with such warmth. They are the guys who pushed us away. So there is no guilt here. And let me also tell you, we are also on a moral high.
Oh, absolutely.
Foreign policy also has a moral dimension. We are not somebody that you can, with a finger, get us to you. We are not Pakistan. We are a nation with self-pride. And it is with great regret that I say this. But I think the time has come now to look for options beyond America. Their misbehavior has been rather hurtful.
It indeed has been. America and India both invested more than quarter of a century in this relationship post 1999, and the manner in which Trump and the MAGA gang are behaving, it just shows a very crass behavior, Alexander Slater. I mean, as somebody who studies the subject, if America was talking about pivot to Asia, they were talking about Indo-Pacific, and suddenly from the White House to the Secretary of Defense, they're talking about Asia-Pacific and not Indo-Pacific. Is America furiously backpedaling? Are you looking at some kind of a G2 arrangement with China? And ultimately, would America end up benefiting China in the long run, which will ultimately challenge American supremacy in the world? So short-term gains, long-term losses for the America, Trump being penny wise, pound foolish.
Gaurav, I think the sentiment that General Shukla expresses is a reasonable one, the one of hurt feelings. I certainly think that the two countries, as you say, over the last half century have worked very hard to build trust after a history before that that was one of great difficulty. And in particular, over the time that I was in India, the last 5 years, I think amazing strides were made between the two countries. We currently find ourselves in a cul-de-sac where the public expressions and, of course, the economic expressions have certainly dealt a setback to that trust. At the same time, I would say that the Trump administration does not trust China. That's clear. Whatever you want to say about what's been going on between India and the US on trade, most of what the Trump administration has been doing through tariffs is geared towards preventing transshipment of goods to third countries from China. And this is one of the areas where I think India does have a vulnerability. Gaurav, you pointed out at the outset that there was a massive trade deficit between India and China. We see this in other contexts like Vietnam, Thailand, and these are things that give the United States some sense of transshipment of goods from China that are masquerading as goods from other countries. And I think whether or not it's accurate, it's what the administration sees. And they're adopting a policy to try and stop that. And that's where a lot of the tariffs are coming from. These are reciprocal tariffs. And some of the new tariffs that are coming down the pipe from Section 2 under a different authority. But ultimately, I don't think
No, but
it's
why would
reasonable
any
to
of these
doubt the
tariffs
Trump.
be aimed at India?
Yeah, so again, I think that there's lots
Why would
going on
any of
here.
these tariffs be aimed at India is something I just fail to understand. You as strategic partners, if you think that to counter China, India is an effective power, and then suddenly the Trump administration throws India under the bus just because Donald Trump feels slighted that he wasn't recommended for a Nobel. I mean, that just sounds too bizarre to be true. But if it is true, I mean, it just goes on to indicate that perhaps India woke up in time, because this is truly, as many have argued in the past, and Pakistanis have warned us that that Kissinger line. It's dangerous to be America's friend. It's enemy, but fatal to be America's friend. And Pakistan has suffered, and now India would have been sailing in the same boat. But thank God for our Atmanirbhar policy. But Mr. Slater, give me a moment. Dr. Tara Kartha, you want to weigh in? Are we being too harsh? Or are we just being very factual about the ground position? Yes, there's intelligence sharing. Yes, there's defense cooperation. But I'm not too enthused with the defense cooperation when the GE-404 engines have still not come for a light combat aircraft. I mean, they may blame these on some kind of delays that are happening with supply chains. It can't take 2 years for those engines not to come. And I'm surprised that we are still signing a deal worth $1 billion for additional GE-404 engines.
Yeah, that was actually quite surprising for me as well. But then I think it was inevitable given that that whole deal was structured around those engines coming in later. But to answer your question, I think your point on this G2, I think we need to keep that in mind as a kind of side as is this possible? However, the other extreme is the US is now ingressing into Central Asia. Okay, they just had the whole bunch over in Pakistan. Okay, they had the military chiefs over. Then they had a critical minerals meet with Central Asia. They are impinging into territory just next to China, next to us, and in Bangladesh. So it's what we are seeing now is one is your Cold War is right on your doorstep. That is the second possibility. I don't rule out the G2, like you said, but I also see this on the ground. And the second part of it is that, I mean, like 25%, they put 25% tariffs on Kazakhstan. Okay, Kazakhstan is a prime, they call it the buckle in the Belt and the Road Initiative. They said you're the worst offenders, Kazakhstan. Worst offenders, Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia. They bumped up all of these SCO countries are suffering through the same thing. So without the SCO in all these years, I used to think, what is SCO about? It's got nothing in common. Now perhaps they do, right? Because everybody is in the same boat. Third thing, however, is that China, like I again said, they are positioning themselves as this great stabilizer, and the US is doing just the opposite. They are splitting countries from one another. So this is a very dangerous game, and we are right in the middle. And that 25% extra tariffs, I think, is what broke the back. It's not so much the public diplomacy. I mean, public yelling. is that, I mean, what? 25% more for what? You start the war and then you tell us to end it. What is wrong with
Yeah,
you?
absolutely. Absolutely. And that sentiment is very widespread across the country, even though people to people, India and America, they remain great partners. But I want to understand from you, Professor Shrikant Kodapalli, reset, of course, is a very strong word, but India, China, are there steps? Do we seek? We're seeking greater access to Chinese markets, but what is it that we can, to sell to the Chinese market? We've been trying for pharma, we haven't succeeded. Agriculture, we haven't succeeded. How does one move forward on that front? And if we do, is that an indication that China wants better ties with India, or it's just optics, it's just words, and the nuclear suppliers group cooperation is still a very long way off?
Yes, I think many of these issues have not been discussed. The NSG, the Security Council membership, because China is the only P5 member which had not endorsed the Indian candidature in the Security Council. They did implicitly, but not so explicitly. There are other issues that China has not agreed to. So this is part of the pressure that China can exert and seeking some kind of concessions from India, and India refusing to concede on many issues to China, and hence probably we'll see that stalemate continuing on those issues. But in terms of what India can sell to China, President Pratibha Patil, in her visit to China in 2010, 15 years ago, she mentioned four areas that could be both the countries can focus on. One is opening up the Chinese market, as you mentioned. Can pharmaceutical software or other products can be sold to China or not? And China did agree, but they did not process some of those suggestions at that time. Secondly, President Patil mentioned about the Chinese investments in India, which stands today at about $8 billion for an economy of $18 trillion. So that is
Yes.
a main area. President Xi Jinping, during his visit to Delhi in September 2014, mentioned about $20 billion investment, but that has not really happened even
$20
after
billion,
11
yes.
years. And thirdly, exploring third markets. That has also not happened in regard to both the. But the larger issue that I wanted to say was that during this meeting, the 50-minute meeting between the two leaders, there is no mention of the previous conditionalities that China imposed on India. For example, after 1962 border clashes in 76, when we normalized relations, China had mentioned three conditions. One, India should accept Taiwan as part of China,
Yes.
one China policy. Second, that Indian government should not say China is a threat. And thirdly, the Indian media, like the India Today, uh, is skeptical of China, and so they need to be muzzled. On that last issue, the MEA told the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in China that this is beyond our control, and we cannot say anything about the Indian media because of the constitutional rights that the Indian media has. On the second issue, Indian government has not mentioned so far. The Ministry of Defense annual reports or the MEA annual reports doesn't mention China as a threat in explicit terms. They mention challenge, they use other words, but it is not mentioned. So overall, we have not, and after Wang's visit to
Okay.
Delhi on 1718, we have seen that the Indian side has given an explainer that there is no mention about Taiwan in the discussions, that India's position has not changed on Taiwan. So these three issues have not come about in the
Yes.
discussions between the two, which indicates that there is some progress actually, that they are not insisting on some conditionalities, and
Okay.
the bilateral relations are moving forward.